The President of the United States will now address you, announced a loudspeaker voice in the lobby in the Space Hotel. Grandma Georgina's head peeped cautiously. You mean she's actually going to speak to us? Whispered Charlie. Shh, listen. Dear friends, said the well-known presidential voice over the loudspeaker. Dear friends. Welcome to the Space Hotel, USA. Greetings to the brave astronauts from Mars and Venus. Mars and Venus? Whispered Charlie. You mean he thinks we're from... Shh, said Mr. Wonka. He was doubled over with silent laughter, shaking all over and hopping from one to another. You have come quite a long way. So why don't you come out just a bit farther and pay us a little visit down on our humble little Earth? I invite all of you to stay with me here in Washington as my honored guests. You could land that wonderful glass air machine of yours on the lawn in the back of the White House. We shall have the red carpet out and ready. I do hope you know most of our language to understand me. I shall wait most anxiously for your reply. There was a click, and the president was gone. What a fantastic thing, whispered Grandpa Joe. The White House, Charlie. We're invited to the White House as honored guests. Charlie caught hold of Grandpa Joe's hands, and the two of them started dancing around and round. They're scared to death, Mr. Wonka whispered. They won't bother us anymore now, so let's have that feast we were talking about, and afterwards we're going to throw the hotel. Are we going to go to the White House? I want to stay with the president, whispered Grandma Josephine. My dear old Dotty Dumpling. You look as much as a man from Mars as a bedbug. They know at once they've been fooled. We'd be arrested before we could say how do you do. Mr. Wonka was right. There could be no question of accepting the president's invite. Make an excuse, said Mr. Bucket. Tell him we're otherwise engaged, said Mrs. Bucket. You're right. It is rude to ignore an invitation. He stood up and walked a few paces from the group. For a moment or two, he remained quite still, gathering his thoughts. Then once again, Charlie saw those tiny twinkling smiles and wrinkles around the corner of the eyes. And when he began to speak, his voice was like the voice of a giant, deep and devilish, very loud and very slow. In the Quelchy Quaggy Sogmire, in the Mashy Midius Harshland, at the witchy hour of gloomness, all the groups come oozing home. You can hear them softly sliming, glistening, hissing over the slubber, all those oily, boily bodies oozing onward in the gloam. So start to run, oh, skid and daddle, through the slubber, slush and saucel. Skip, jump, hop, and try to scuttle, all the groups are run the roam. In his study, 240 miles below, the president turned as white as the White House itself. Jumping jackrabbits, I think they're after us. Oh, please let me blow them up, said the ex-chief of the army. Shut up, said Miss Tibbs. Go stand in the corner. In the lobby of the Space Hotel, Mr. Wonka had merely paused in order to think up another verse, and he was just about to start off again when a frightful piercing scream stopped him cold. The screamer was Grandma Josephine. She was sitting up in bed and pointing with a shaking finger at the lifts at the far end of the lobby. She screamed the second time, still pointing. And all the eyes turned towards the lifts. The door of the one on the left was sliding slowly open, and the watchers could see clearly that there was something thick, something brown, something not exactly brown but greenish brown, something slimy and with large eyes, squatting inside the lift. Chapter 7. Oh, something nasty in the lift. Grandma Josephine had stopped screaming now. She'd gone rigid with shock. The rest of the group by the bed, including Charlie, had become still as stone. It looked more than anything like an enormous egg. It was as tall as a big boy and wider than the fattest man. The greenish-brown skin had a shiny, wettish appearance, and there were wrinkles in it. About 3/4 of the way up, in the widest part, there were two large round eyes, as big as teacups. The eyes were white, but each had a brilliant red pupil in the center. The red pupils were resting on Mr. Wonka, but now they began traveling slowly. At this point, Charlie suddenly noticed that the next elevator was also coming down. The indicator on the numbers were flashing. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, L for lobby. There was a slight pause. The door slid open, and there was another one identical to the first. Now the numbers were flashing above all three of the remaining lifts. Down they came, down, 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 and soon, at precisely the same time, they reached the lobby floor, and all the doors slid open. 5 open doors now. One creature each. For about 30 seconds, nothing happened. Nobody stirred, and nobody made a sound. So was the suspense. Charlie was so frightened he felt himself shrinking inside his skin. Then he saw the creature starting to change shape. Its body was slowly becoming longer and longer, and it slowly formed an S. Then the one on the next lift began stretching itself in much the same way, and what a weird and oozy thing it was to watch. It was twisting itself into a shape that was a bit different from the first, balancing almost but not quite on the tip of its tail. Then the 3 remaining creatures began stretching themselves all at one time. When they had all stopped stretching up and bending, they finished up as the word scram. Scram! Shouted Mr. Wonka. Get up quick! People have never moved faster than Grandpa Joe and Charlie and Mr. and Mrs. Bucket at that moment. They all bucked behind the bed and started pushing. Mr. Wonka ran in front of them shouting, Scram! 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 And in 10 seconds flat, all of them were out of the lobby and back inside the Greek glass elevator. Frantically, Mr. Wonka began undoing bolts and pressing buttons. The door of the great glass elevator snapped shut, and the whole thing leaped sideways. They were away, and of course all of them, including the 3 old ones and the bed, floated up again in the air.